you're like me, you've enjoyed a good fantasy series from time to time. And what's a good fantasy series without a good villain? Cell from Dragonball Z is one such villain. With the ability to literally drink people right out of their clothes, absorb the DNA information of his victims, as well as revive himself on a cellular level, Cell was the true villain to beat. So, what would happen if scientists were able to create a creature like Cell? Moreover, would it even be possible? Welcome to Darkology. In order to analyze whether it would be possible to actually create a monster like Cell, we first need to figure out what current applications of modern science, engineering, and evolution match Cell's physiological traits and abilities. Then we must explore the current state of genetic engineering and artificial creation and apply that knowledge to what might actually be feasible. But before we do all that, let's do a quick recap of who Cell is.
Once upon a time, in another world, far in the future, in an alternate timeline, mankind had fallen to artificial intelligence. Two impossibly powerful and ruthless androids appeared and single-handedly wiped out nearly all life on Earth. My friends and I were the planet's last hope, and we failed. These monsters showed no mercy. The pain they caused others brought them a sick pleasure. They slaughtered everyone like it was a game. They didn't even show mercy to their own creator, Dr. Gero. He met his end not long after they were activated. Dr. Gero might have perished, but his horrifying life work would still continue in a secret underground bunker below his laboratory. While Gero's androids destroyed the world above, a supercomputer loaded with the mad scientist's consciousness worked away tirelessly for years, programming and overseeing the development of what he called his ultimate creation. Breaking free from an enormous cicada-shaped husk, the bio-android known as Cell was born, composed from the DNA of the world's strongest fighters, the likes of which included the Saiyans, Namekians, and even the galactic tyrant Frieza, as well as his father. As a result, the monster known as Cell was able to fly, regenerate, survive in the harshest of living conditions like the cold vacuum of space, and was biologically immortal. Like a Saiyan, he was able to become even more powerful after recovering from near death. Like a Namek, he was extremely cunning and could regenerate. And just like Frieza and the androids, he was evil. He was a deadly predator that hunted the survivors of that world. You see, like every organism, Cell wasn't born fully developed, though where he might have differed from you or me was what he fed on to grow. Cell gained strength by absorbing the bio-extract of the living. Through a stinger in his tail, he'd melt his victims from the inside out and sucked up the people juice until there was nothing left but a pile of clothes. He was a monster. No matter how much Cell fed, he could never be satisfied on this diet alone. In order to fully mature to his final and complete form, Dr. Gero designed him to specifically require the infinite energy found in the androids. Androids 17 and 18 to be exact. However, no matter how far he searched, he could not find the androids in his own timeline. I would later find out that my friend, Trunks, was the one responsible for that. He'd somehow found a way to destroy the androids and bring peace back to that timeline. I wish he'd been more careful. But he couldn't have known about Cell. Cell killed Trunks in that timeline and hijacked his time machine, a vehicle that I'm convinced has more to do with multiverse theory than time. As fate would have it, the time machine brought Cell to my timeline, where the androids had only just awoken and everyone was still alive. My world was completely untouched by the android's destruction, and thus, Cell suddenly found himself with an entire planet to prey on. He devoured entire cities of people and eventually found the androids, evolving to his complete and terrifyingly powerful form. He would have destroyed the planet if it hadn't been for my father's sacrifice. No, even then, that wasn't enough. It took everything I had and the help of my friends to finally put that monster down for good. If you're hearing this, please be responsible with what you do with scientific research. Our minds are capable of making terrible things a reality. Technology could expand beyond the limits of what we can control, and sometimes we can lose sight of that. Don't make the same mistake as Dr. Giraud.
Oh, come now, Gohan. Is that any way to treat an old friend? Oh, sure, I may have done a few naughty things in the past, but this is the present. People change, and I think these people are genuinely curious. Yes, that's why you're still here, isn't it? Well, don't let me stop you!
So let's start with absorption, more specifically, how it might work in real life. Let's take the example of insects that use toxic venom as a defense mechanism. Bees and wasps are perfect. An enzyme called phospholipase A, which makes about 10 to 12% of bee venom, destroys phospholipids and also breaks down the membranes of blood cells, resulting in cell destruction, and if that wasn't enough, causes the release of pain-inducing agents. During his first confrontation with Piccolo, acid dripped from his stinger, indicating that absorption happens by injecting a digestive enzyme into the victim and absorbing the dissolving genetic extract. In bees, the enzyme hyaluronidase aids the spread of venom by catalyzing the breakdown of protein, allowing it to penetrate further into flesh. Basically, it turns organic filler matter into water that is then typically absorbed back into the host's body, though in the case of a creature like Cell, would be absorbed by the predator for consumption via a stinger. Speaking of creatures that drink their prey, tarantulas consume their food by injecting it with an enzyme that starts to break it down into a liquid, which is then slurped up, eliminating the necessity for chewing. The tarantula's stomach is wrapped in strong muscles which allow it to expand and contract, working like a pump. It sucks up liquefied food like a vacuum, and as the spider consumes more and more, it expands to accommodate the liquid. While we're on the subject of absorption, it might be valid to address the debate of whether or not Cell gains the genetic information of the victims he has absorbed. See, the acidic venom of bees effectively kills cells, and spiders, well, they only drink melted biomatter as an energy source. However, there does exist a species of microscopic organisms that do steal the DNA of other organisms to survive. Referred to as ancient asexuals, bdelloid rotifers are entirely female and in order to reproduce, must hijack the DNA of other species for their own benefit. This bizarre species has been known to steal genetic information from fungi, plants, and bacteria. It is believed that the introduction of foreign genes caused by this process is what has allowed bdelloids to survive for so long without sexual reproduction. Were this trait to be introduced into a hybrid organism, it's not too far-fetched to say that this ability could evolve. Bdelloids are also able to survive environmental stresses by entering a state of dormancy known as anhydrobiosis, which enables the organism to rapidly dehydrate and thus resist desiccation, which is basically another way of saying to dry up and die. When these creatures recover from desiccation, it has been shown that they undergo a unique genetic process where horizontal gene transfer occurs. This is the process by which they steal genetic information, resulting in up to 10% of the bdelloid genome to be obtained from other species. We've already figured out that spiders have similar dietary patterns to Cell, but that's not all. Spiders can also regenerate. That's right. They are able to regrow their missing legs. Natural selection has seen to it to grant several specific species with this interesting ability. Lizards are able to grow new tails, though it takes 9 months, and planarians are flatworms that if cut into pieces will have each piece grow into a new worm. The same goes for sea cucumbers. Starfish that lose arms can grow new ones, and in some cases, an entire animal can grow from a single lost arm. Oh, and Cell may be related to sharks, as they can regrow lost teeth. Perhaps the most interesting of specimens, the Mexican axolotl is capable of regenerating a missing limb, tails, and parts of its brain, heart, and lower jaw. According to James Monaghan, a biologist from Boston's Northeastern University, if they're paralyzed in the back, they can make all new neurons and new connections that allow them to use their legs again. Some of the animals in this list can effectively clone themselves through this regeneration method. And wouldn't you know it, that ties in well with our next ability. In addition to regenerative powers, sea sponges also have a specific method for cloning themselves. It's called gemulation. This starts with the formation of gemmules, groups of cells that are enclosed in a protective casing. When each gemmule is provided with a food supply, it is moved to the surface of the sponge and ejected from the adult, after which point it will mature into a new sponge. Perhaps less complicated, the aphid species has been well known to asexually reproduce at a rapid rate. A mother aphid is capable of birthing up to 12 immature clones of herself in a single day. Sound familiar? Other animals capable of this feat include jellyfish, marbled crayfish, boa constrictors, whiptail lizards, gale wasps, Komodo dragons, and hammerhead sharks. In addition to bedelloids, lobsters stand out as possessing traits similar to cell. They do not suffer through old age like we do. As they keep growing in years, they don't lose function or get slower. They actually get bigger and more powerful. When they grow so big that their shells can no longer contain them, they simply shed it and grow a new one. Another species that continues to grow bigger as they get older are clams. And while there are gargantuan clams which have been determined to be over 400 years old, they're not even the most impressive. Glass sea sponges are the oldest living animals on the planet and are estimated to live up to 15,000 years. So now that we've identified some of cell's key traits that actually exist across a variety of species in the world, the time has come to challenge whether it would actually be possible for scientists to engineer a genetic cocktail that could develop into a new superorganism. Genetic engineering is the process of manually adding new DNA to an organism, the goal being to add new traits that aren't normally found in that organism. Hybrid organisms have mostly been created in fiction, and only recently have scientists begun to conduct actual experiments in modern research. Genetic engineering is a fairly new practice seen in practical research, and this is widely due to legal and moral limitations. Bioethicists are concerned with the ethical questions that arise in the relationships among life sciences, biotechnology, medicine, politics, law, and philosophy. However, we have already seen a lot of genetic alteration and hybridization in the foods we eat. For example, in 2013, it was recorded that about 85% of corn grown in the US had been genetically modified. In 2003, Chinese scientists at the Shanghai Second Medical University managed to successfully fuse human cells with rabbit eggs. The embryos formed were reportedly the first stable human-animal chimeras in existence. While laws against the creation of hybrid beings have been proposed in US states and in the US Congress, scientists have argued that legal barriers might go too far and prohibit medically beneficial studies into human modification. Debates and controversies surrounding human-animal hybrid research parallels that of stem cell research. So let's just say, for the sake of hypothetical reasoning, that there are no ethical boundaries. Imagine a reality in which stem cell research and the mixing of species and genes was encouraged and celebrated in modern science. So let's say that our base organism is human, and we want to introduce the gene of regeneration. Genetic engineering, also called transformation, works by physically removing a gene from one organism and inserting it into another, giving it the ability to express the trait encoded by that gene. That is to say that by doing so, the hybrid organism has the potential to now access that trait. Think of it like taking a recipe out of a cookbook and transferring it into a new cookbook. You don't necessarily need to use it in the new cookbook, but it's there in case the need arises. It's a long process that involves finding an organism that naturally contains the desired trait, in this case, regeneration. The DNA would be extracted from that organism, and the desired gene would need to be located and copied from thousands of genes that were extracted. The gene may be modified slightly to work in a more desirable way once inside the recipient organism. This new gene is called a transgene and is delivered into the cells of the recipient organism either via a delivery bacteria or by shooting microscopic particles coated with copies of the transgene into cells in a process called the gene gun method. Either way, genetic engineers have no control over where or if the transgene inserts into the genome, and as a result, it takes hundreds of attempts simply to achieve even a single transgenic organism. However, once a transgenic organism has been created, scientists take a seat back and allow nature and traditional breeding to improve and perfect the characteristics of the final product. So obviously, this would take a very long time. But the question was whether it would be possible. Over a long series of genetic engineering trials, each meant to introduce a new trait to the hybrid creature, it stands to reason that eventually we might see the birthing of a creature similar to Cell. It would probably take hundreds if not thousands of years to get the recipe just right, and of course countless tortured living experiments along the way, but all in the name of science, right? And even if it is possible, there's no way we can accurately predict that these variable genetic characteristics wouldn't clash with one another. Would the trait of biological immortality seen in jellyfish be made obsolete by an ability to regenerate? At the end of the day, the process of creating a creature like Dragonball Z's Cell requires a maximum effort by science, and even then, would still require a lucky nudge of evolution from nature to get the recipe just right. And though it's doubtful that we'd ever live to see a creature exactly like Cell, we'd come pretty damn close. In a world of infinite time and space, everything is possible. But the question was if it would be possible. And the short answer is yes.
Thanks for watching.
Hey, just kidding, it's me. I just wanted to say thank you so much to all you who watched that video, and I also want to give a huge thank you and shout out to my new friend Eden, who helped me out with the voiceover for Gohan at the beginning of the video. If you guys liked her work, trust me, there's a lot more where that came from. That was just like one take. She's amazing. Be sure to check out her channel right at this link here. I will also post a link in the description down below, so you can check that as well. And I will see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.